What is happiness for people? As the saying "to each their own" suggests, it varies from person to person. Just as having a meaningful job is essential in life, having the right partner may be one of the greatest sources of happiness. I'm Margaret. For the past 3 years, I've been working as an assistant to certified nursing assistants. Now, I'm responsible for duties related to the Care Manager certification exam, and I'm motivated to train as many professionals as possible to support the increasingly vital caregiving industry in our aging society. I first encountered caregiving when I was in middle school. At that time, my family consisted of my parents, my younger brother, my grandma, and me, a family of 5. My grandma, who had been quite spry for her age, had a fall. She fractured a bone, and although it healed, she was left with mobility issues and became almost bedridden. My family, unprepared and without the necessary mindset, had to start caring for Grandma. Without the knowledge or skills required for caregiving, we were constantly struggling and experimenting. All that accumulated was a sense of exhaustion and helplessness. The burden on my mother, who was the primary caregiver, must have been immense. When it became clear that my mother might collapse under the strain, we decided to seek professional help. With the support of a home care worker, the load on our family significantly decreased. The tasks performed by professionals were efficient, and Grandma enjoyed a peaceful daily life. The financial burden was indeed considerable, but the benefits far outweighed the costs. Most importantly, with less time dedicated to Grandma's care, our family life returned to something close to normal. The home care workers, who brought this relief to us, inspired my deep interest in the caregiving profession. In the summer of my senior year in high school, Grandma passed away. She departed peacefully, leaving words of gratitude behind. One message was for the home care workers, and the other was for our family. She expressed heartfelt thanks to the home care workers for their devoted care and to us for introducing them to her. I remembered the home care worker saying that caregiving is a rewarding job that helps people. I decided I wanted to pursue a career in this field. According to the home care worker, anyone can do caregiving work, but having qualifications allows for a broader range of duties. There are certifications such as Certified Nursing Assistant Training and Care Manager, and obtaining these can lead to career advancement, so I decided to acquire all of them. I thought that by understanding all aspects of caregiving and being involved in the field, I could contribute to revitalizing the caregiving industry. Despite being an essential job in society, caregiving is often underpaid. The working conditions are also underdeveloped, leading to a shortage of caregivers, a situation I wanted to change. After graduating from high school, I considered attending a vocational school for caregiving, but I chose a 4-year university to gain a solid education and earn qualifications. While studying at university, I worked part-time at a caregiving office to gain as much experience as possible.
Mom, are you listening? You seem a bit distracted.
The voice brought me back to reality. Oh, Brittany. I'm sorry. I was just lost in thought. My daughter Brittany had been trying to get my attention a few times. Are you thinking about work? Yeah, it started with that, and then I started thinking about the past. Why I took this job in the first place. How many years has it been since I graduated college? With an adult daughter, it's obvious that I've aged too. Thinking about it like this makes me realize how much of an older woman I've become. I've spent my life working tirelessly in the caregiving industry, determined to raise the social recognition and improve the conditions of caregiving jobs. This job has always been a perfect fit for me, and my days have been filled with my work, which is practically my life. However, meeting a certain man made me realize that there's more to life than just work. He was involved in a job that was indirectly related to caregiving. That's why we met. He was different from me, but had a strong sense of mission and a desire to make the world a better place. Our similar values drew us together, and our differences intrigued us. I never thought about getting married, but it felt natural to end up with someone who changed my perspective from the ground up. In the second year of our marriage, our daughter Brittany was born, and I took a break from caregiving. I had never imagined myself becoming a mother, being such a workaholic. But the time I spent with Brittany was irreplaceable, and I spent my days raising her with the help of my husband. As time passed and she grew, I gradually returned to work, but my approach to it had changed since becoming a mother. By the time she became an adult, the aging society had progressed even further, and the need for caregiving would be several times greater than it is now. So, I felt a strong need to strengthen the caregiving industry to prevent young generations from being overburdened. This conviction made me even more dedicated to my work. Seeing my dedication, she grew interested in caregiving and said she wanted to pursue the same career. Hearing my child express the desire to follow in my footsteps was a powerful moment for me. While I was more than half happy, I also worried because caregiving is tough, and there might be other jobs more suitable for her. Even so, I wanted to respect Brittany's wishes and decided to support her. As expected of my daughter, she continued to hold on to her strong resolve and even obtained her certified nursing assistant qualification. After gaining 5 years of practical experience, Brittany earned her care manager certification just a month ago and is now thriving at a large caregiving agency. As a mother of a daughter in her prime, while I think it's great that Brittany is devoted to her work, I worry if she is thinking about marriage at all. I haven't seen any sign of a partner, which makes me even more concerned. But I can't talk about marriage with much authority either. In fact, my husband and I finalized our divorce 4 years ago. We were both the type to plunge headfirst into our work, and we had been managing well together. However, when my husband's job changed slightly due to a transfer, the differences in our stances became clear. We started having more frequent arguments over differing opinions, causing a strain on our relationship. Amid this, we found our paths slightly diverging, and our inability to separate work from our personal lives led us to have numerous discussions, eventually deciding to part ways. It's rare to choose divorce over work-related differences when there's no infidelity or debt involved. Proof of that is the surprise and disbelief of our friends when they heard the reason for our divorce. We didn't hate each other and we still remained Brittany's parents, so even after the divorce, we continued to interact and sometimes worked together on shared goals. Even though we interacted, we were still divorced, so it was awkward to talk about marriage with Brittany. It was on a sunny holiday in early summer when I realized that my concerns about Brittany's marriage were unnecessary. "Mom, I have a boyfriend, and he proposed to me the other day." Brittany spoke to me, shyly but with a serious look in her eyes. At first, I couldn't immediately grasp what Brittany meant. The word proposal didn't register, and I just stared at Brittany in a daze. But I quickly regained my composure and started bombarding Brittany with questions. Brittany explained that the care facility she worked for was quite large, so they often received requests for support from understaffed facilities. It was at one of these support assignments that Brittany met her destined partner, Kevin. "It was supposed to be my day off, but my parents dragged me out to help. I don't know much about caregiving, so I mostly did the heavy lifting." Kevin's parents ran a home care agency, but he worked in a different field. Guess what his job is? He's an international pilot, a first officer. His workplace is the cockpit of a plane. I couldn't believe someone like that would come into my life. She had gone to support a small, newly established care facility about 3 years ago. I remembered giving some advice about the new establishment back when I was in charge of supporting such facilities. Anyway, It was surprising to learn that Brittany had been dating someone and that she was now engaged. Kevin seemed like a wonderful person, and the fact that his job was unrelated to ours might be a good thing. I didn't know much about being a pilot, but I understood it was an impressive job. As a parent, I just had to trust my daughter's choice.
Mom, our families are meeting for the first time soon, so please be ready.
The days flew by after she told me about her engagement, and soon it was the day for our families to meet. Kevin made a very positive impression. What I appreciated most was his pride and confidence in his job as a pilot. Kevin also showed understanding towards his parents' caregiving business, which was a plus. This meant he also understood our line of work. The success of his parents' business suggested their sincere dedication.
We're thrilled that Brittany, a certified care manager, will become our son's wife.
And Mrs. Margaret, you have made significant contributions to the caregiving industry. We are honored to become relatives. While their compliments were flattering, it felt a bit embarrassing. The conversation naturally focused on work, which was inevitable, but I noticed a few things that caught my attention.
Running a facility is harder than I thought. Funding is crucial. Most of our profits are consumed by maintenance costs. Without subsidies, we wouldn't make it.
Care facilities can receive grants from the government or local authorities if they meet certain conditions. The forms of grants vary, but they generally don't need to be repaid. To run a facility healthily and help its users, these grants are essential, and I had previously worked hard to expand this system. I'll be getting involved with this matter again at some point. So, I understand that it's natural for them, the managers, to rely on grants, but I was bothered by how much they seemed to prioritize making a profit in their language. Of course, since it's a business, they need to generate profit to keep it running, but in the case of caregiving, shouldn't the convenience of the users be prioritized? That said, they aren't doing anything wrong. There's just a slight difference in perspective and stance between me, who is not a facility manager, and them. And here, what's important is the character of Brittany's fiancé, Kevin. I'm glad I could give him my seal of approval. After our conversation ended, Brittany's wedding plans proceeded smoothly. As the wedding date approached, she talked about her plans after the marriage. When I get married, I'll move to Andrew's office. Also, we're going to live with his parents. I was surprised that she would leave her current large office, but I felt uneasy about the idea of newlyweds living with his parents right away.
That place can't compare to your current one in terms of size. Why are you moving there? And living with his parents right after getting married, is that okay?
It was a natural concern for me, but she said she had been invited by his parents like this.
Precisely because it's smaller, you'll have more autonomy and be able to fully utilize your abilities, making it a rewarding workplace,
Brittany said, not entirely displeased. And I want to support him as his wife. Kevin had suggested the cohabitation. As an international pilot, he's away from home for days when on flights, and he worries, so he wants his wife to be with his parents for peace of mind. While I could understand his feelings, I still felt concerned about it.
I'll be working with Andrew and his parents are kind people, so it'll be fine.
Though I had my worries, since it was something Brittany and her soon-to-be husband had decided together, I thought it best to refrain from interfering. I decided to trust her and keep quiet. The wedding went off without a hitch, and Brittany and Kevin started their new life together. Both her new job and new life were going well, and Brittany contacted me to say she was enjoying every day, which relieved my worries. It looks like they're still struggling with finances. I looked at the books, and the income and expenses are about the same or slightly in the red. Running a facility is tough. While caregivers must act in the best interest of the users, it's also necessary to focus on maintaining the facility. If the foundation for providing services falters, they won't be able to offer adequate support. Mom, do you have any information on grant applications?
Well, there's a seminar on grants coming up. How about attending it? It could be useful for the future.
When I suggested this, Brittany said she'd invite her in-laws right away. So, I decided to attend the seminar too. I had been unsure about going, but this turned out to be a good opportunity. Kevin is probably over the Pacific right now. Depending on his destination, once he flies out, he won't be back for a week. I was prepared for this, but it's still a little lonely, she said before hanging up. Her saying she felt lonely was probably her true feelings. Brittany, her in-laws, and Kevin attended the seminar I had mentioned.
Since I just finished a flight, I have some time off. I want to understand Brittany's work better and be with her, so I decided to come along.
Brittany, sitting next to Kevin, looked quite shy with her ears turning red.
Isn't the lecturer Charles the one they call Monster Charleses? They say he's really strict.
Brittany asked worriedly, trying to reassure her parents.
Oh, some people say that, but he's just very dedicated to his work. He really cares about the healthcare industry.
Charles, the lecturer, is a government official who oversees grants, ensuring they are appropriately allocated and not misused. If there are any discrepancies or fraud in the applications, it's his job to uncover and address them. It so happened that last year, there were a series of fraudulent claims nationwide. Charles led the investigations and strictly enforced the law, earning him the nickname Monster Charleses across the country. The seminar was so popular that the venue was packed, and Charles, with his professional presentation skills, captivated the audience.
Grant programs are essential for the smooth operation of healthcare businesses. They must be fairly distributed, and there must be no fraud involved in receiving them. If any fraud is discovered, it will be met with strict legal penalties.
Charles used examples from the previous year's fraud cases, explaining the rules and penalties, while clearly outlining various grants.
There are many dedicated individuals working to improve the social status and working conditions in the healthcare industry. It's crucial that we all maintain our integrity and commitment to our roles, helping those in need of care, and thereby stabilizing society. It's all in your hands. Keep up the good work.
As Charles concluded the seminar with an inspiring speech, the audience erupted in applause. As we left the venue, everyone started sharing their thoughts.
Well, I wouldn't say it was entertaining, but it was definitely educational. The passion and power of that guy are impressive.
Yes, he truly is amazing.
What? Brittany, are you a fan of Charles? Oh, no, not exactly a fan.
Kevin's teasing made Brittany nervous, so I couldn't help but laugh. Brittany immediately glared at me.
But it was indeed quite impactful. That's why they call him Monster Charles.
But we learned about different grants. We should apply for the necessary ones right away. Brittany's parents started discussing amongst themselves, leading to the end of our gathering. I wanted to spend more time with Brittany, but it couldn't be helped. She probably wanted some time alone with Kevin, whom she hadn't seen in a week. A month after the seminar. I hadn't seen Brittany since then and was thinking of giving her a call. Suddenly, she showed up at my house.
Oh, what's wrong?
How have you been? Is work going well? I had heard from a contact that her company, run by Kevin's parents, had applied for several grants in Brittany's name. Knowing her, I expected her to say everything was fine and that work was going well, but something seemed off. Her face was dark and lifeless. I quickly searched for another topic.
By the way, about the test questions you gave me feedback on, I made some adjustments based on her suggestions, and they turned out great. Thank you.
I serve on the committee for the Care Manager Certification Exam questions. So, I had asked Brittany, who is an active care manager, for her opinion on the next exam questions. However, I shouldn't have gotten involved with the test questions. Maybe I shouldn't have chosen a career in caregiving. She muttered to herself without looking at me.
What's wrong, Brittany? Did something happen?
It's nothing, Mom. I guess I'm just not as strong as you. After that, no matter what I asked, she kept dodging my questions and soon left. Her retreating figure seemed so small, like she might disappear entirely, heightening my worry. I tried calling Brittany several times after that, but even over the phone, I could tell she was becoming more and more exhausted.
What's wrong? If you're not feeling well, you should see a doctor.
I'm fine. It's not an illness, so don't worry.
How can I not worry? You don't sound well, and it concerns me.
Every time I called, we had the same exchange. Frustrated, I decided to contact Kevin. That's right. Brittany hasn't been well lately. When I asked if something happened at work, she strongly denied it. She won't tell me anything, so I'm at a loss. Kevin is preparing for his promotion to captain and has been increasing his flight hours to secure the necessary time. So, I'll be away on a flight again from tomorrow for a week. I wish I could stay by her side.
I understand. Leave Brittany to me and focus on your work.
Thank you, Margaret. I appreciate it. 5 days later in the evening, I had guests at my house. While talking with one, another person arrived. We talked with 3 people, then another joined us. As we chatted with 4 people, time flew by, and it was already dark outside. Since my mobile phone was on silent mode during the visit, I checked the display in case someone had tried to contact me. To my surprise, I had 30 missed calls from Brittany. When I called her back, she answered immediately.
Mom, I can't take it anymore. I can't bear this.
Her voice was faint and trembling, mixed with sobbing.
Wait there. I'm coming right now.
I grabbed my car keys and rushed out of the house. When I arrived at Brittany's place, I rang the doorbell repeatedly and shouted her name. The door opened, and Brittany staggered toward me, clinging to me as she burst into tears. I hugged her, assuring her that everything would be all right. Just then, Brittany's in-laws appeared, looking annoyed. What on earth is going on? Margaret, why are you here at this hour?
That's my line. What have you done to Brittany to make her suffer this much?
I don't know what you're talking about, but it's inappropriate to come at such an hour. As they tried to send me away, the person I brought with me stepped out of the car and said to them,
You are the ones being unreasonable. Do you even understand what you've done?
Brittany's in-laws were utterly shocked by his stern tone.
Charles, why are you here?
The person I brought along was Charles, who had given a passionate speech at a recent seminar. With eyes filled with anger, he addressed them.
We know everything you did. How dare you use my daughter? I will not forgive you. Charles's daughter? Brittany? What do you mean?
What I hadn't told them was that Charles was my ex-husband. In other words, he is Brittany's father. We had planned to invite Charles to Brittany's wedding, but he couldn't attend due to work commitments. So, Brittany's in-laws didn't know that he was her father. I had felt too embarrassed to tell them about the circumstances of our separation because I had struggled to gain understanding from friends and acquaintances about our situation. The reason for our divorce was the clash between my focus on supporting caregivers and his focus on exposing and condemning their wrongdoings. In the end, Charles was also working to protect the social standing of the caregiving profession, so our ultimate goals were aligned, which I understood well.
Brittany came to me for advice, and I investigated. You forced her to apply for fraudulent benefits. How could you make someone who takes caregiving so seriously do such a thing? And that's not all. You demanded she give you the exam answers for the care manager certification. You threatened to make her break up with Kevin if she didn't comply.
As Brittany explained, almost in tears, another person stepped out of the car and spoke loudly.
That is unmistakably blackmail. How could you make your niece do such a thing? Aren't you the senator's niece?
This time, it was Laura who gasped in surprise. The man who had come with Charles was my brother Thomas, who now serves on a committee dealing with caregiving policies, working to improve the industry from the political side. Thomas was also too busy to attend Brittany's wedding, so the in-laws had no idea we were related. When Brittany's in-laws realized who we were, their faces turned pale, and they began to tremble. It was sheer despair knowing all their wrongdoings were laid bare. And then, the last person stepped out of the car. With a stern expression, he glared at them.
Dad. Mom. How could you do this to her?
After scolding his parents, Kevin looked at Brittany.
Brittany, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. It must have been so hard for you.
The moment Brittany saw Kevin, she left my side and rushed into his arms. I felt a pang of loneliness, but then I reminded myself this was for the best, and I faced the in-laws.
People like you are why the caregiving profession is misunderstood by society. The responsibility you bear is immense. You will pay the price.
Even the sun they didn't expect to see in the US showed up, and they finally collapsed, bowing their heads until they nearly touched the ground. The police then arrived, and the two were taken away for questioning and later detained. We also went to the police station as witnesses, and through our testimonies, their wrongdoings were fully uncovered. The Caregiving Business Subsidy Fund does not require repayment. Since it is given as a grant, any money received is pure profit. Once they tasted the benefits of receiving the grant, they started repeatedly falsifying documents and applying fraudulently, even though they were not eligible. The person used in this scheme was Brittany, who holds a care manager qualification. Because of the trust Brittany had built in her work, the documents she submitted were seen as credible. The numbers provided by the highly skilled care manager, Brittany, were so well crafted that they were difficult to detect. Moreover, the two people who wanted to increase the number of care managers in their office forced her to leak information as soon as they learned she had helped create the exam questions. The qualifications for taking the exam require practical experience, but Brittany was instructed to falsify this period as well. Brittany, threatened with being separated from Kevin if she did not comply, unwillingly followed their instructions, but this led to a growing conflict in her heart, and she began to suffer mentally. She didn't come to me for help but to Charles, which was a bit disappointing, but maybe in times of real need, a father is the one you can rely on. The visitors that day were Charles, Thomas, and Kevin. Charles had come to our house to discuss this issue. Thomas happened to visit me by coincidence. The reason Kevin came to our house was that there was trouble with his scheduled flight, and his flight schedule had changed, allowing him to return home earlier than planned. He wanted to thank me for Brittany and visited with a gift before heading home. At that time, the four of us shared information about what was happening around Brittany. And when we heard Brittany's cry for help, the four of us jumped into the car. All the fraudulently obtained subsidies had to be returned. Their methods were extremely malicious, far from being simple mistakes. Fraudulently receiving subsidies can be considered a crime of fraud, potentially resulting in imprisonment for up to 10 years. At the prosecutor's request for detention, they were held for a long period. This prolonged detention not only exhausted them mentally and physically but also affected their daily lives. The funds of their office were depleted by the return of the subsidies, so the closure of their business was certain. Thus, they would be unemployed. Even if they were released on bail without prosecution in the future, there would be no place for them in the caregiving industry anymore. Brittany was not prosecuted because she was coerced, so her record remained unblemished. Kevin, distressed by the suffering inflicted on his wife, declared he was cutting ties with his parents. While it is not legally possible to sever the parent-child relationship, it is possible to avoid future contact. Brittany's emotional wounds healed over time, allowing her to return to work. From now on, work will further energize her. But the one who supported her the most was her husband, Kevin. It would not be an exaggeration to say that thanks to him, Brittany recovered. She truly found a great partner. I feel deeply that this is the most important thing. Speaking of partners, this incident has led Charles and me to start mending our relationship. Perhaps it was unclear why we separated, but now we feel like bridging the 4 years we were apart. It's not a matter of which is more important, work or private life, but both are invaluable parts of life, and I've come to realize this at this age. While both his work and my work are important to enrich our lives, I have come to believe that merging our time and walking together is the most important thing.
Mom!
It had been over 6 months since I'd last heard from my daughter, Violet, when her call came through. And it was past 8 p.m. It was rare for Violet, who had her own family, to call at such an hour unless it was daytime. I instinctively felt that something serious must have happened. Violet? What's going on? Calling at this hour? What happened? At first, Violet didn't respond. All I could hear from the other end of the phone was a quiet voice, as if air was leaking out.
Mom!
With a thin voice, as if squeezing it out, Violet finally spoke. Violet. What's wrong? Are you really okay?
Mom, help me!
Realizing it was an emergency, I hit the speaker button on the phone. Immediately, my husband Matthew rushed to my side, listening intently. Violet, pull yourself together. What happened?
It hurts. I haven't eaten anything. I might not make it.
Haven't eaten anything? What do you mean?
I haven't been given anything to eat by Florence and the others.
The image of Violet crawling on the floor, desperately reaching out to me for help, flashed through my mind.
That's too dangerous for you,
Matthew yelled, grabbing the car keys and heading to the door.
I'm coming to get you right now,
I shouted through the phone, hurrying after Matthew. My name is Sierra Smith. I'm 70 years old. Currently, Matthew and I run a steakhouse together. Matthew, having trained in famous restaurants when he was younger, is well regarded for his skills. Matthew and I met through a relative's introduction, and he opened his own restaurant when we got married. Not only is Matthew skilled in his craft, but his adept conversation skills and unpretentious personality have won over many regular customers. It's been nearly 30 years since I started helping out at the shop, but lately, I've begun to feel my body's decline. Perhaps due to age, I've started to feel pain in my back with just a little movement. Matthew has suggested hiring part-time help, but while grateful for his concern, I worry about labor costs and choose to work while I still can. Sometimes, Matthew jokes, it would have been nice to have her around at times like this, referring to our only daughter, Violet. Since she's already independent and has her own family, we can't ask her to come back home and help with the shop. Violet currently lives with her husband Albert, their son Kendrick, and her mother-in-law Florence in the next town over, about an hour's drive from our home. Recently, her sister-in-law Aurora joined them. I don't know the details, but I heard Aurora returned home after her divorce. I had hoped that Violet would help out at our shop after graduating from college, but Violet left home, saying she wanted to see more of the world. After that, she landed a job at a major department store, working in the ladies' clothing section. Though new to the workforce, Violet quickly won over customers with her charm and inherent cheerfulness. It was there she met her future husband, Albert Adams, who worked in the external sales department, dealing primarily with affluent clients purchasing luxury goods, and was considered a star in one of the company's most prestigious divisions. When Violet first introduced me to Albert, I felt a twinge of unease.
Are you sure it's okay to marry such a perfect man?
Indeed, Albert, with his handsome features and skillful conversation that appealed to women, had won over many customers, some of whom visited the store specifically to see him. Yet, Violet seemed unworried. "It's okay, Mom. Don't worry. I trust him." Subsequently, Violet married Albert, and upon doing so, left the department store to devote herself to supporting Albert as a housewife. The following year, the joy of having a grandson, Kendrick, allowed me to breathe a sigh of relief.
It seems, despite everything, those two are doing well.
For a while, the family of 3 lived in an apartment, but 5 years ago, following the death of the father-in-law, they moved to the elderly mother-in-law's house, thinking she would feel lonely by herself. Occasionally, Violet would call home, but she started to lament that Albert was often not around. "Albert stayed over at a colleague's apartment again last night because work was late. It's been happening a lot recently. Even on weekends, he's away for golfing with his college." Still, Violet laughed it off over the phone, suggesting it might just be the fate of a working adult. One day, I decided to call Violet after a long time. "Kendrick's birthday is coming up, right? Do you have any plans for the day?" "So far, we don't have anything planned for the daytime." "What's up?" "Perfect. Our shop is closed that day, so how about the 3 of us go out somewhere? An amusement park or aquarium, somewhere that would make him happy." "That sounds nice. Recently, Albert's been so busy with work, he hardly comes home. Kendrick has been getting bored without being able to go out." Violet sounded excited over the phone, but as Kendrick's birthday approached, she called me. "I'm sorry, Mom. I hate to say this, but some plans have come up since then. We can't go out with you after all. I'm really sorry."
"Plans? What happened?"
"A kids' club has organized a birthday party, so we can't make it that day." "A kids' club, huh? I guess you can't just cancel on them." Though disappointed, I switched gears. "Then it doesn't have to be Kendrick's birthday. Let us know whenever you're free." "I'm sorry, Mom. It doesn't look like we'll be able to go out for a while. Next week, there's a nature class at the kids' club, and the week after that, swimming lessons start. We're just too busy. Elementary school kids these days sure have it tough. It's disappointing, but it seems like giving up is the only option." I had been looking forward to seeing my granddaughter, so my disappointment was significant. I asked some of the parents who are regulars at our restaurant about what gaming consoles are popular with kids these days and sent one to Kendrick. "Mom, the gift arrived. Thank you." I received a thank you call from Violet. However, something about Violet's voice, which I should be familiar with, felt off to me. Maybe it's a mother's intuition, but Violet, usually bright and cheerful, sounded somehow dark and subdued this day. "What's wrong? You sound tired today."
"Not at all. I'm as energetic as ever."
"Is that so? Well, if you say so."
"Anyway, Thanks for the gaming console.
About that. Since I'm not up to date with what elementary school kids like these days, I sent what was recommended to me. Did Kendrick really enjoy it?
Of course he did. He was really happy, saying, "Grandma knows best."
For some reason, Violet seemed in a hurry to end the call, as if she wanted to avoid prolonging our conversation. Are you guys doing okay?
Why the sudden concern? We're managing fine. So don't worry about us, Mom.
You've complained before about Albert coming home late. Has anything changed since then?
You worry too much. I told you not to mind it. Forget about that. Look, phone calls aren't free, you know, so I'm going to hang up now. You must be busy with the shop, too.
Just wait a minute. Right now, I'm more concerned about you than. But before I could finish, Violet had already hung up on me. Just by asking about her well-being, why does Violet seem to reject me this much? It's as if she doesn't want me to probe into her family's affairs, dodging my questions and cutting off the conversation unilaterally. I can't shake the feeling that something is not right. I felt a sense of foreboding. After the shop closes, it has become a routine for Matthew and me to have a quiet drink in the living room. That night, as usual, we relaxed, sharing the weariness of the day. It's about Violet. Something seems off. She seems tired, or maybe lacking energy. I can't quite put my finger on it.
Do you call her sometimes?
I just called her this afternoon, but she cut me off abruptly.
Is she keeping you at a distance?
More like she doesn't want to worry me. It might just be my mother's intuition, and I might be wrong, but I feel like Violet is hiding something from me. Matthew crossed his arms and fell silent for a moment before speculating.
Could it possibly be related to that?
To what? After hesitating, as if unsure whether to speak, Matthew seemed to make up his mind.
I heard something troubling from one of our regulars about Albert.
What happened with Albert?
The regular mentioned seeing him coming out of a pub with a woman, not Violet.
That can't be. Albert wouldn't do such a thing.
The woman apparently wasn't young, but was quite beautiful, dressed flamboyantly in what seemed like expensive brands.
It must be a case of mistaken identity. I said this seemingly in defense of Albert. Not so much to defend Albert, but more so because I didn't want to see a rift form between Violet and him, a sentiment more accurately described as parental concern.
Of course, the regular couldn't be sure it was Albert, just someone who looked somewhat like him.
I didn't want to believe this witness account at face value. Yet, I've heard that Albert has been coming home late and going out more on weekends lately. Could it be that he is seeing another woman behind Violet's back, unknown to us? Without any concrete information, my thoughts inevitably drift towards the worst. I'm worried about Violet. She never complains or shows weakness. If she knows about this and is suffering in silence.
Don't think too negatively. I'll see what I can do. For starters, we know a lawyer among our regulars. I'm thinking of consulting him.
Since then, concern for Violet has preoccupied me daily, to the point of accidentally dropping and breaking dishes. What's wrong? You seem tired yourself. I paused my work to call Violet multiple times, but she rarely answered. When she did, her updates were surprisingly brief, simply saying, "I'm fine." But whenever I tried to delve deeper into family matters, she'd laugh it off and hang up quickly. Each time I heard Violet's voice over the phone, it sounded weaker, as if it might fade away at any moment. Recalling Violet's charming, beloved smile before her marriage, I felt increasingly overwhelmed by my growing anxieties, leading to tears. Then, about half a year later, I received a sudden call from Violet, who had not contacted us for some time. And it was past 8 p.m. Such calls from Violet, now with her own family, were rare at this hour unless it was daytime. I instinctively felt that something serious must have happened. Violet? What's going on? Calling at this hour? What happened? Violet didn't respond. All I could hear from the other end of the phone was a quiet voice, as if air was leaking out. Despite holding the receiver, I was certain it was Violet. Is there anyone around you? Are you alone there? The lack of noisy chatter in the background led me to this conclusion. Mom! With a feeble voice, as if squeezing it out, Violet finally spoke. Violet. What's wrong? Are you really okay?
Mom, help me!
Sensing an emergency, I pressed the speakerphone button. Matthew quickly came to my side, listening intently. Violet, pull yourself together. Tell Mom what happened.
It hurts. I haven't eaten anything. I might not make it.
Haven't eaten anything? What do you mean?
I haven't been given anything to eat by Florence and the others.
The image of Violet crawling on the floor, desperately reaching out for my help, flashed through my mind.
Violet is in danger,
Matthew yelled, grabbing the car keys and heading towards the entrance.
I'm coming to get you right now,
I shouted through the phone, quickly following Matthew. During the drive, we were silent the entire time. Matthew kept his mouth shut, gripping the steering wheel, his brows furrowed, veins standing out on his forehead. There was an indescribable anxiety and anger at the possibility that our precious Violet was being subjected to injustice. If I looked in the mirror, I'm sure I would see the same expression on my face as on Matthew's. Holding back the tears, I closed my eyes and saw Violet's innocent, youthful smile. The image of a pure, innocent girl reaching out to Matthew and me with her tiny hands, trying to share happiness, filled me with frustration. Violet was asking for help. Thinking this made us feel incredibly ashamed for not noticing her suffering sooner. Even without seeing her directly, it was clear from her voice on the phone that Violet was severely weakened. I couldn't believe that Violet, who always had a vibrant smile, was now in such a state, calling for help. Looking out the passenger window at the dark town, I thought,
this must be a dream, a bad dream.
Passing through a quiet residential area, the light leaking from each home seemed to carry the laughter of families, reminding me of what Violet in our life should be, which brought more sadness. The journey that usually takes an hour during the day was quicker due to the lack of rush hour traffic, and we soon arrived at the Adams house. Are you okay? If you want, I can go in alone. Matthew spoke kindly, showing concern for me, but this was a problem for our family to face. Preparing for whatever reality awaited us, I resolved. We will definitely save Violet with our own hands. When I rang the doorbell, a carefree voice responded after a pause. Hello? Who is it at this hour? Contrary to the urgent call from Violet, Albert's relaxed and peaceful voice left us puzzled.
It's Smith, Violet's mother.
Upon hearing my name, Albert fell silent, possibly on guard, then slowly asked,
Is there something wrong?
He then cracked the door open slightly, peering out at us standing outside.
I'm sorry for bothering you late at night, Albert. It's urgent, and we need to talk.
Matthew wedged his foot into the slight opening of the door and forcefully pushed it open.
What are you doing, Matthew? We're coming in.
We barged in with a determined attitude, not taking no for an answer. Standing in front of a dimly lit, narrow room at the end of the hallway.
Is Violet in here?
There's no explaining why we thought Violet was in this room, but we instinctively knew she was here, calling out to us for help.
This is outrageous. Even if you are Violet's parents, I'll call the police. Good. That way, the police can witness this too.
Without hesitation, Matthew forcefully slid open the room's door. There, Violet was curled up on the floor, resembling a worn and discarded mop. It took a few seconds for my brain to recognize that it was indeed Violet, so emaciated and altered was her appearance.
Violet! Oh, what has happened to you?
We rushed to Violet, lifting her weakened body in our arms.
Mom, help me! I'm in pain. I can't take it anymore.
Barely speaking between erratic breaths, that's how Violet responded. It was immediately clear that Violet was delirious and suffering from dehydration.
What are you doing here? Leave immediately.
Albert tried to dismiss us as if we were intruders, but his voice lacked any conviction. His gaze wandered as if frightened, and his body trembled.
Albert! Bring some water now! I can't possibly. Don't argue, just do it.
Pressured by my stern shout, Albert ran to the kitchen and quickly returned with a bottle of water from the fridge. I snatched the bottle, opened it. Here, Violet. Drink some water. Alerted by the commotion, Florence and Aurora also appeared. What is all this noise about?
It's so loud I can't hear the TV.
We're the ones who need an explanation here. As Matthew glared at Albert, Albert began to apologize profusely.
I'm so sorry.
Albert then started to explain how Violet ended up in this state, a story beyond our wildest imaginations. It seemed that initially, Violet and Albert had managed well living with Florence. However, at some point, Albert started coming home late, and in response, Florence's attitude towards Violet turned cold. One day, when Violet felt anxious about Albert's late returns, she sought advice from Florence. Instead of addressing her concerns, Florence blamed Violet for Albert's absence. Violet couldn't understand why she was being blamed.
It's because you haven't returned to your pre-pregnancy figure,
Florence told her. Following that, Florence began imposing all household chores on Violet and even restricted her meals. Despite this, Violet remained upbeat, brushing off the unreasonable demands, but it seemed Florence found no amusement in her resilience. The harassment escalated, and under the guise of preventing secret snacking, Florence took control of all Violet's finances. Seeing an opportunity for entertainment, Aurora, the recently divorced sister-in-law, joined in, with Florence assigning her to monitor Violet whenever Florence was away. The hardest part for Violet was being denied the opportunity to care for Kendrick herself. Despite living under the same roof, there was nothing more painful and sad than not being able to raise her own child. Florence forbade Violet from seeing Kendrick and had Aurora stop her whenever she tried to approach his room. While Violet was punished with cleaning duties, Florence spent joyful moments with Kendrick. "This is all I know," Albert said, collapsing to his knees, powerless.
Don't speak of our family's shame so lightly. How could you discuss such trivial matters with strangers?
Albert, you've become so weak.
That's not all, is it? There's more you're hiding, right?
Albert looked up, his face flashing with panic. Just then, a taxi stopped at the entrance and someone alighted.
They've arrived.
The Addams family was confused, unable to grasp the situation. Soon, a slender gentleman in his 50s appeared, causing Albert's face to turn pale.
It seems you recognize this gentleman, don't you?
Albert didn't answer, realizing he was in a situation with no escape. He waited silently, letting time pass. Good evening.
My name is Kevin Watson. I believe this is the first time I've had the pleasure of meeting the Addams family in person.
Kevin Watson introduced himself, looking at each member of the Addams family in turn. In his youth, Kevin Watson was a popular actor known to everyone, starring in movies and dramas. As he aged, his popularity waned, leaving only his name known to the public.
Why is Mr. Kevin Watson at our home?
Florence, representing the Addams family, asked, her smile strained and her voice high-pitched with clear agitation. It was clear to anyone that she was visibly shaken.
It was I who invited Mr. Watson here. Before coming, I contacted a lawyer acquaintance and asked Mr. Watson to join us as well. And what exactly is the relationship between Mr. Watson and us?
Florence attempted to feign ignorance, but I smirked and said,
Don't pretend you don't know anything. You must have some idea why Mr. Watson is here.
The lawyer arrived shortly after, apologizing for his delay. Sorry for being late. I was organizing some documents for another case, and it took longer than expected. The arrival of the lawyer silenced the Addams family. In fact, at Sierra's request, I've been investigating Albert's personal life for the past 6 months. It turns out, Albert has been frequently meeting a certain woman, a wealthy client at the department store where Albert works. And upon investigating this woman, we uncovered a shocking truth.
That woman happens to be my wife, Hillary Sanders.
Kevin Watson added in a calm tone to the lawyer's explanation. When my wife brought up divorce, I was initially surprised, but deep down, I felt, of course. She had been going out secretly for a while. After hearing the details from this lawyer, everything made sense. So, we decided to come here to hear directly from Mr. Albert, the party involved. Albert slowly stood up, and in a frail voice, as if devoid of spirit, began to tell everything.
My relationship with Hillary started, as mentioned earlier, through her being a major client at the department store and me being the attendant. Over the years of working visits to her home, we developed a relationship. Initially, it was just a fling for me, but then it was revealed Hillary was pregnant, and we realized we couldn't turn back. We discussed leaving our partners to remarry. I'm truly sorry.
At Kevin Watson's feet, filled with indignation, Albert collapsed powerlessly. When I was a celebrated actor, adored by the public, Hillary would always greet me with her brightest smile. But now that my work has dwindled, meeting a handsome man like you must have been irresistible for her. She's the type who must have everything she likes, Kevin Watson said with a weary smile. Albert, who wanted a divorce from Violet, was in a bind because filing for divorce while having an affair would lead to a hefty compensation claim against him. So, he turned to Florence for help. Initially, Florence resisted the idea of divorce due to how it would look but changed her tune completely upon learning the other woman was wealthy. Thinking there would be no need to pay compensation if Violet, the daughter-in-law, initiated the divorce, Florence began to torment her relentlessly, hoping to drive her out of the house.
I believed you, but you...
Violet, staggering yet standing firm on her feet, expressed her frustration loudly, tears streaming down her face.
I believed that if I lost weight, Albert would return to me. That's why I endured all the unreasonable demands from Florence and Aurora. To think it was all a scheme to drive me out.
It's okay. You've done nothing wrong. You don't have to push yourself anymore. I embraced Violet tightly. I did want to divorce Violet, that's true. But I never imagined Mom and Aurora could be this cruel to her. I'm utterly disillusioned.
Wait just a minute. I was only trying to help you by getting Violet out of this house. It's your fault for having an affair in the first place. That's right. Albert, you've been silently condoning what we've been doing. Don't act like you were oblivious to it all now.
As the three of them argued, I was speechless, but Violet, trembling with anger, shouted,
Enough! If you so desperately wanted me out of here, I'll leave on my own.
"Oh, that would be a relief."
You're mistaken to be pleased, Florence. I will never forgive you. Once we're divorced, I will indeed demand a substantial amount in compensation, just so you know.
With that, Violet called out with a voice that echoed through the house.
Kendrick! Where are you? Come here, we're going to live with Mom and Grandpa and Grandma from now on.
Okay, coming. Kendrick cheerfully ran down the stairs and hugged Violet. Subsequently, Albert, exposed for his affair with a client, was dismissed from his company for severely damaging the corporate image. Following her declaration, Violet filed for divorce and sued Albert for a significant amount in compensation. After losing his job and being ordered to pay compensation for the divorce, Albert, following a major argument with Florence and Aurora, was forced to reluctantly sell the house. Violet's anger did not subside with this. She also demanded substantial compensation from Florence and Aurora for the mental and physical distress they caused her. Despite the harassment from Florence and Aurora, Violet had meticulously documented the daily events in a notebook, which proved advantageous in court. Returning to her parents' home, Violet gradually healed both mentally and physically, reverting to her cheerful self. There were ongoing issues with the Addams family, but with the help of a skilled lawyer, everything was resolved. I heard through the grapevine that Albert and Hillary had a child. After losing his job and the house, Albert, supported by Hillary's wealth but devoid of the will to work, grew increasingly unkempt. Moreover, with the elderly Florence and the nagging Aurora joining them, Hillary, raised in luxury, could not stand it and eventually left with the child. What became of the Addams family after Hillary left is neither within my knowledge nor my interest.
Well, I've slacked off enough. Time to get to work.
With renewed determination, Violet started helping out at the store, taking over for me as I struggled with back pain. Having worked in customer service at a major department store, Violet's reputation quickly made our shop a local sensation, drawing long lines of customers. With our new promotional model in place, I have no regrets. I stepped back from the storefront, spending my free time watching over Kendrick as much as possible. Kendrick, soon to be a middle schooler, declared at his elementary school graduation, "I want to be a cool chef like Grandpa." His proclamation brought Matthew and me to tears. We are now eagerly looking forward to his future.